The year 2020 was undoubtedly one of the strangest for all of us. The COVID-19 pandemic forced much of the world's population to stay indoors, abruptly changing daily routines. With social isolation, many began looking for new ways to entertain themselves, and in this context, the Randonautica app emerged as a sensation, offering a unique, and in some cases, even unsettling, experience. Randonautica is an app that proposes something simple but intriguing. It generates random coordinates based on your location, encouraging people to leave home and explore the unknown. The idea of venturing into nearby but unexplored places captivated a public eager for novelty. At first, it seemed like just a game, a way to turn the mundane into something mysterious. But as time went on, it became clear that the discoveries made during these expeditions could be much more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Randonautica's popularity skyrocketed during the lockdowns. The app offered an escape, a way to break the monotony, even if only for a short time. People started sharing their experiences on social media, creating a kind of subculture around the app. On platforms like TikTok and YouTube, videos of users exploring strange places and discovering bizarre objects began to appear in droves. The most curious part? Most of these explorations did not end in a typical way. Many of these documented expeditions showed users being led to uninhabited locations, abandoned areas, and, in some cases, truly eerie settings. In various videos, the initial curiosity quickly turned into fear. Objects such as old toys, torn photos, and personal items were among the most common finds. But there were also those who encountered things that could only be described as bizarre, sinister notes, unknown symbols, and even signs that crimes may have occurred. For some, Randonautica seemed like nothing more than a modern-day treasure hunt. For others, it was as if the app had some kind of energy of its own, leading people to dark places, both physically and mentally. Each user's experience was unique, but there was an undeniable pattern in many of the stories: unease. It wasn't uncommon to hear people report strange sensations upon arriving at locations suggested by the app, as if something was about to go wrong. As the months went by, more and more reports surfaced, describing situations far beyond simple adventures. There were stories of people finding evidence of unsolved crimes, others who felt they were being watched by strangers while exploring, and in some cases, people who disappeared or were threatened after their expeditions. What started as a technological curiosity quickly turned into a cultural phenomenon, filled with mystery and fear. The rise of Randonautica amid the chaos of the pandemic is one of the many examples of how technology can connect us to the unknown in unexpected ways. For some, it was a fun distraction. For others, a traumatic experience. But regardless of your point of view, Randonautica certainly left its mark on 2020 and continues to inspire stories that make even the most skeptical question the boundaries between chance and destiny. At first glance, Randonautica seems to be just another geolocation app. However, the concept behind it is far more intriguing than one might think. The app uses a random number generator, RNG, to define specific coordinates based on the user's location. That in itself isn't so unusual, but what really grabs attention is how people are encouraged to use these coordinates to explore the unknown. One of the most captivating aspects of Randonautica is the promise of stepping out of your comfort zone and discovering places you'd never normally visit. The concept of a random expedition sparks anyone's curiosity. After all, who doesn't enjoy a bit of adventure, especially when routine and boredom are part of the daily landscape? The app is designed to challenge common perceptions, encouraging users to see the world around them with new eyes. At the heart of Randonautica are two main concepts, the so-called attractors and the voids. These are the types of points to which the app can direct users. Attractors are areas where the density of random coordinates is high, suggesting that something important or curious might be there. On the other hand, voids are places where the density of coordinates is extremely low, creating a sense of emptiness and isolation, making them even more appealing to those seeking a mysterious and perhaps unsettling experience. Randonautica also introduced a psychological layer to the process: setting intentions. Before starting an exploration, the app asks you to define your intention for the expedition. Some users report that choosing an intention like adventure, discovery, or even scary can influence the types of places and objects you find. This simple act of mentalizing an intention may seem harmless, but many claim that it plays a key role in the experience, creating a connection between the explorer's mind and the surrounding environment. What's most interesting, and perhaps most disturbing, is how intentions often seem to align with the discoveries made. Stories of people who visualized fear or mystery report finding truly frightening places, such as abandoned houses or sinister symbols, while those who sought peace or serenity ended up in tranquil meadows or serene trails. This coincidence, or synchronicity as some prefer to call it, leads many to believe that there is something deeper in the way the app works, something that transcends mere random coordinates. However, not everything is positive. The app has also attracted criticism and skepticism. Many question whether Randonautica is simply a tool that exploits people's predisposition to see patterns where none exist, or if there is truly some mysterious influence in how it functions. Some psychology experts suggest that the very act of exploring the unknown already alters our perception of reality, making us more likely to notice what we would normally overlook, especially when we are expecting to find something out of the ordinary. The concept behind Randonautica reflects the human fascination with the unknown and the constant search for hidden meanings. By blending technology, geography, and psychology, the app touches on something fundamental: the desire to connect with the world in ways that challenge common sense. By taking us off our usual path and leading us to places we wouldn't choose on our own, Randonautica stirs both curiosity and fear, two emotions that often go hand in hand. The idea of exploring the unknown has always been attractive to the human mind. But what if that exploration leads to discoveries that should never have been made? That's exactly what many Randonautica users experienced. What started as a game for many ended in macabre scenes, seemingly straight out of a horror movie. Bizarre objects, abandoned locations, and in some cases, even evidence of crimes became part of these journeys, turning what was supposed to be fun into a traumatizing experience. There are numerous reports of disturbing discoveries while using Randonautica. Many users, upon following the coordinates generated, end up in places that exude an atmosphere of fear and discomfort. Desolate spots like abandoned buildings, deserted forests, and unlit streets are often just the beginning of the nightmare for some. It's not uncommon for explorers to find items that seem to have been intentionally placed, things that don't belong in the location, but carry with them an unsettling story. In many accounts, users come across objects that initially seem mundane, but upon closer inspection, reveal something much more sinister. In one case, for example, someone found a series of broken dolls hanging from trees, their faces painted red and their clothes dirty. Another explorer, after following a point generated by the app, arrived in an isolated area where they found children's clothes scattered on the ground, accompanied by disturbing drawings that appeared to be created by a young mind. In other cases, the discoveries are far more explicit and even criminal. One of the most infamous incidents involving Randonautica occurred in 2020, when a group of teenagers in Seattle used the app and were directed to a beach where they found a suitcase. Their curiosity led them to open the suitcase, and to their horror, it contained human remains. The police were called, and it was later revealed that the bodies belonged to a couple who had been brutally murdered by their landlord. This incident, documented by the teenagers themselves, quickly went viral on social media, raising serious concerns about the dangers of using the app. That discovery was one of the most shocking cases associated with Randonautica, but it's far from the only one. Numerous stories detail users finding signs of dark rituals, including strange symbols drawn in circles, makeshift altars, and even animal remains from sacrifices. In one story, a group of friends was led to a forest where they found an abandoned cabin filled with disturbing notes on the walls and a calendar that appeared to count down to something horrific. These often dark and inexplicable discoveries raise the question, what exactly are people finding when they use Randonautica? Is it pure coincidence, Or is the app really guiding users to places charged with negative energy? For some, the answer lies in the power of randomness and human curiosity, which leads us to interpret certain events in specific ways. But for others, there is something much deeper, and perhaps more sinister, at play. Regardless, the number of frightening discoveries linked to the app is undeniable. While many people use Randonautica without major incidents, others have had experiences that will haunt them for a long time. With a mix of curiosity, mystery, and the unexpected, these expeditions often become more than simple explorations. They turn into encounters with the darker and more inexplicable side of the world around us. David and his friend were just looking for some fun during a time when boredom and monotony dominated many people's lives. It was August 2020, a year when entertainment options were limited by pandemic restrictions. Out of pure curiosity and lack of other things to do, they decided to try Randonautica. The idea of exploring the unknown seemed exciting, but neither of them was prepared for what they would end up finding. Their first attempts with the app were nothing special. The first 3 coordinates generated by Randonautica led them to inaccessible places, like other people's backyards and private areas. They were about to give up, but decided to try one more time. The next point generated by the app seemed promising, so the 2 friends decided to get in the car and drive there. Their destination, a small trail, seemingly ordinary, with no major signs of what awaited them. As soon as they arrived, a sense of unease began to grow. The trail was isolated, surrounded by trees, and unusually quiet. But the real strangeness began when, while walking, they found something that shouldn't have been there. A note attached to a stick stuck in the ground. What could have seemed like a simple curiosity quickly turned unsettling. The note read, "Write your phone number here." Intrigued and a little suspicious, they opened the note. Inside, the message was even stranger. "I can give you a phone number or even an email. Give me your address and I'll send it to you." Something about that message felt off, like a trap was lurking. Despite the air of mystery, David made a decision most of us probably wouldn't. He wrote his phone number on the note and put it back in place. The strangest part, though, was what was around them. Next to the note, they found a series of bras carefully placed on a fallen branch. The scene made no sense. The objects didn't seem to have been there long, as despite the last rain having been 3 days earlier, the paper of the note showed no signs of moisture. It was as if someone had recently set up that scene. They also found other disturbing items, like condom wrappers and a pot that appeared to have been used to make a fire. The whole place had an uncomfortable aura, as if it was waiting for someone. Feeling that something was very wrong, David and his friend decided to leave. But their curiosity got the better of them, and the next day they returned to the site. This time, the note with David's phone number was no longer there. Whoever had set up that scene had returned to collect the message. Days later, David received a message from an unknown number. The text was simple, just, "Hi." When he replied, asking who it was, the response was even more chilling. The sender sent David's address. At that moment, self-preservation kicked in, and he immediately blocked the number. The idea that a stranger not only had his phone number, but also knew where he lived, was enough to send anyone into a panic. The mystery of who set up that scene and what their intention was remains unsolved. David never returned to the location, but the feeling that something was deeply wrong on that trail haunted him for a long time. This is just one of many stories that show the darker and unpredictable side of Randonautica, where the unknown can quickly turn into a personal nightmare. Taylor Vasquez, like many other curious people during the pandemic, decided to try Randonautica. The app promised an escape from routine and perhaps a dose of mystery to break the monotony. However, what started as a simple exploration quickly turned into a disturbing and frightening experience that Taylor would never forget. She had no idea that the coordinates generated by the app would lead her to an unsettling encounter with the inexplicable. The first location Taylor generated seemed harmless, an abandoned creek not far from her home. Upon arriving, she walked along the banks, expecting to find something curious or unusual. At first, everything seemed quite normal, the kind of place anyone could explore without any surprises. But that changed when she spotted something on the ground that caught her attention. A series of drawings apparently made by a child. So far, nothing too strange, but the details in the drawings soon began to reveal something more disturbing. The drawings, made with simple strokes, had a sinister aura. Some depicted distorted figures, while others seemed to portray situations of pain or anguish. The feeling of discomfort grew as Taylor examined the papers, but at that moment, something else happened. She heard a sound, a strange noise coming from a distance that sounded like a child's voice. It was hard to tell if it was really a child or if her mind was playing tricks. Frightened, she stopped recording the video she had been making and ran out of the area. The mystery, however, did not end there. In the days that followed, Taylor decided to return to the same spot, hoping to find answers to what she had experienced. When she arrived at the creek again, something was different. There were new drawings, which hadn't been there before. This time, the images were even more disturbing. Among them, Taylor found a symbol that sent shivers down her spine. The sigil of Baphomet, a representation associated with occultism and satanic rituals. It was as if someone, or something, knew she would return and wanted to send an even clearer message. While she examined the drawings, she once again heard the sound of a child. At first she didn't realize it, focused on the papers. But when she finally noticed what she was hearing, terror gripped her, and once again she fled the scene. After sharing her experience on TikTok, one of her followers pointed out something she hadn't noticed. In one of the videos in the background, there appeared to be the face of a child peeking from behind a tree. This revelation made her story gain even more attention, deepening the mystery. Taylor didn't stop there. On another visit to the creek, she found an old, worn-out journal filled with cryptic and dark messages. Each page seemed to reveal a new mystery, and the contents only intensified the feeling that something evil was at work. The journal wasn't just filled with random scribbles or meaningless words. There was a pattern, a sequence of events and descriptions that appeared to tell a distorted story, as if someone had used the diary to record disturbing occurrences. The last time Taylor had the courage to return to the creek, she made a final discovery: a makeshift Ouija board made from pieces of cardboard and a large knife placed next to it. That was enough to convince her never to return. She knew she wasn't just dealing with coincidences, but with something much darker and more dangerous. Since then, Taylor made it clear she has no intention of going back to the site, and her involvement with Randonautica ended there. Taylor's story became a prime example of how Randonautica can lead people into unexpected situations, where the simple act of following random coordinates can trigger a series of events that defy logic and reason. Whether it was a terrifying coincidence or something darker, we may never know for sure. What is clear, however, is that this experience will stay with Taylor and her followers for a long time. Taylor Vasquez's experience with Randonautica, filled with strange sounds, disturbing drawings, and occult symbols, left not only her, but also many of her followers questioning what really happened at that abandoned creek. For some, Taylor's discoveries may seem like frightening coincidences, but for others, there's something much darker at play. The implications of her exploration go beyond a simple outing with an app. They touch on psychological and even spiritual terrain. One of the most intriguing aspects of Taylor's journey was the pattern of events. Every time she returned to the site, new objects appeared, as if someone was aware of her presence and waiting for her. The drawings, already unsettling on the first visit, became even darker the second time around. The introduction of the Baphomet sigil, a symbol associated with the occult, raised the level of fear and made it clear that the situation wasn't just a product of chance. For many, the presence of occult symbols is not merely decoration, but a sign of much darker intentions. The journal Taylor found, which contained cryptic and disturbing messages, raised another important question. Who was behind all of this? The journal seemed to be a record of events or thoughts that aligned with the sinister atmosphere of the place. Each page revealed something new, another layer of mystery and discomfort. It was as if someone was trying to tell a story that shouldn't be heard. The fact that Taylor was the only one to find this journal may have been a coincidence, but the sequence of events made it seem as though she was being pulled deeper into a narrative of fear and despair. The presence of the makeshift Ouija board and the knife only reinforced the idea that someone was intentionally trying to summon or communicate with something at that place. For many, the Ouija board is seen as a gateway to the unknown, a tool that can connect people with forces beyond human control. The fact that Taylor found this object in a location already filled with danger signs is not something that can be easily dismissed. Whoever left it there seemed to be playing a macabre game, and Taylor almost became an unwitting participant. Beyond the physical objects, Taylor's experience also tapped into something more subtle: the fear of the unknown. The sound of a child's voice, repeatedly heard during her visits to the creek, might have been just the wind or some other ambient noise, but in the context of what she had already discovered, it felt like a bad omen. The sighting of a child's face peeking from behind a tree, captured on video and pointed out by a follower, added another layer to the mystery. Was it real? Or an illusion brought on by fear and adrenaline? These moments stir the most primal part of us, the fear of what we cannot explain. Another important aspect of the implications of this exploration is the psychological impact it had on Taylor and those who followed her story. Fear isn't just an immediate response, it can leave lasting marks. Since then, Taylor hasn't returned to the site, and the memories of what she found there continue to haunt her. The idea that someone or something was toying with her sanity, manipulating the elements around her to create an atmosphere of terror, is one of the reasons she decided to stop using the app. This is the kind of experience that changes how someone views the world around them, making every sound, every shadow, a potential threat. Finally, there's the question of what all this means for those following the story. On social media, many people wonder if it's all staged or if there's something real and dangerous behind Taylor's experiences. The internet is full of theories and speculation, but the truth is that no one can say for sure what happened at that creek. What we can take from it is that Randonautica, as fun as it may seem, can sometimes lead us into situations that challenge our understanding and our courage. The implications go far beyond a simple adventure. They touch on the primal fear of the unknown that we all carry within us. For Davey and her friends, using Randonautica began as a harmless prank. Inspired by TikTok videos showing others discovering strange and mysterious things while using the app, they decided to try their luck. Living in a rural area of Alabama, in Lookout Mountain, Davey and her roommate Ash were eager to see what the app had in store for them. Joined by two other friends, the group set their intention. The word they chose was spooky, something scary. The first sign that things could go wrong was the location generated by the app, an eerily close spot to Davey's house. The coordinates led them to a road called Owl's Hollow Road, a long, tree-lined and unlit stretch. As the night wore on, the group became increasingly apprehensive. Despite the initial excitement, they all knew that exploring such an isolated area in the dead of night might be more than just a fun adventure. It was 1 a.m. when the group of friends arrived at the site. The atmosphere was oppressive, without any lights. The only visible things were the shadows of the trees swaying in the wind. Davey parked the car by the side of the road while her friends debated whether they should proceed. The decision to explore the dark trail ahead was made with nervous laughter, but everyone felt the same thing, a growing sense that something was wrong. Even in the car, with the doors locked, they felt vulnerable, as if they were being watched. Hesitation grew as they looked at the trail that disappeared into total darkness. They decided they were not prepared. Davey's phone was low on battery, and all they had for protection was a small knife. The group agreed to back out and turn around, but in doing so, they realized they would have to pass the trail again. The tension mounted, and everyone in the car fell silent. As they passed the spot, Davey glanced in the rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of something that made her speed away. A hooded man stood by the edge of the trail, watching them. Without immediately telling her friends what she had seen, Davey drove as fast as she could back home. The scene replayed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the image of the motionless figure watching her car disappear down the road. When they arrived home, the group tried to ease the tension with conversation and laughter, but the feeling that something sinister had happened didn't go away. The rest of the night was filled with unease, and everyone went to bed with their minds racing, trying to make sense of what they had experienced. The following day, Davey decided to return to the location, this time with just her friend Ash, and during daylight hours. The sunlight brought a temporary sense of security, and the two friends, armed with a knife and a fully charged phone, followed the same trail that had filled them with dread the night before. As they climbed the trail, they noticed that it led to a clearing, and the sight that awaited them made their blood run cold. The clearing was littered with trash, tires, and fast food bags, but what stood out most were the mattresses. Several mattresses were arranged as if they were beds, complete with sheets, pillows, and blankets. The discovery was as disturbing as it was mysterious. Who could have left these made beds there, and why? The atmosphere in the clearing felt heavy, as if something terrible had happened, or was about to. Davey and Ash agreed it was time to leave as quickly as possible. But as they descended the trail, they noticed something they hadn't seen before. A small red cooler lodged in a ditch. The air was thick with the smell of decay. Driven by curiosity and horror, they opened the cooler with a stick, only to be greeted by a sight that would haunt them. A tangled mass of wet hair and the unmistakable stench of rotting flesh. The scene was too much for them to handle. Davey and Ash ran back to the car and sped away. What was in the cooler, or who had left everything in that clearing, remains a mystery. But the experience deeply marked them. Since then, Davey has never used Randonautica again, and the image of the hooded man, the made-up beds in the middle of nowhere, and the horrific contents of the cooler still haunt her mind. What was meant to be a creepy but harmless adventure had turned into a real-life nightmare. Davey and Ash had seen enough to realize that the location Randonautica led them to was not just another isolated trail on a rural road. After finding the perfectly arranged mattresses in the clearing, a scene straight out of a nightmare, the sense of unease only grew. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. As they walked back down the trail toward the car, something caught their attention. A small red cooler, partially buried in a ditch, emitting a foul odor that turned their stomachs. From the moment they saw it, they knew the cooler was hiding something terrible. The overwhelming stench of decomposition filled the air, and the place felt like a repository for dark secrets. Ash was the first to notice the cooler, and her instinct was to back away. Davey, however, driven by morbid curiosity, decided to investigate. Using a long stick, she managed to tip the cooler into an upright position. The sound of something sloshing inside, as if floating in liquid, heightened their anxiety. What was inside? A dead animal, or something worse? When they finally opened the cooler, the shock was immediate. The putrid, moist, and warm air that escaped from the small opening was unbearable. The first thing Davey saw was a large clump of black, wet hair, tangled in something they couldn't immediately identify. The scene was repulsive, and their first instinct was to get away as fast as possible. The sight of the hair, the nauseating smell, and the swarm of insects that emerged from the cooler were enough to suggest that something had died in there, and it had clearly been there for a while. As they began to piece things together, they noticed a decomposing cat not far from the cooler, its body in an advanced state of decay. It was possible the animal had been left there as part of some ritual or macabre act, but there was no way to be sure. What troubled them most was the fact that, while the cat was heavily decomposed, the cooler's contents seemed much fresher. This raised more questions. Who had left the cooler there? And why? The feelings of discomfort and danger intensified, and the two friends knew it was time to leave once and for all. At that moment, adrenaline surged through Davey. She shouted for Ash to get back to the car, and they sprinted down the trail until they reached the vehicle. With their hearts racing and hands shaking, Davey started the car and sped down the road, desperate to put as much distance as possible between themselves and that cursed place. The drive home was silent, with both friends still processing what they had just witnessed. Whatever had been in that cooler, along with the mattresses in the clearing and the hooded man Davey had seen the night before, created an atmosphere of horror they could never have anticipated. Once they finally left the area behind, Davey could barely speak. The trauma of the discovery was too much for her to immediately explain to Ash what she had really seen inside the cooler. The smell, the hair, the insects, everything was still seared into her mind. They both knew something was deeply wrong with that place. It was as if they had stumbled upon a dark secret, something that wasn't meant to be found. The experience brought to the surface a primal fear, and what had started as a game on the app had turned into a traumatic episode. That trail on Owl's Hollow Road, and everything they encountered along the way, would never leave Davey's mind. From that day forward, she vowed never to return, not even in daylight. She deleted Randonautica from her phone, trying to erase all memories of the experience. The red cooler, with its horrifying contents, and the aura of death surrounding that place had become symbols of the kind of horror that can be found when exploring the unknown. For Davey, some trails simply aren't meant to be followed. The Alki Beach murder case is one of the most infamous and disturbing incidents involving the use of Randonautica. It perfectly exemplifies how a seemingly harmless curiosity can lead to a grim and tragic discovery. In 2020, a group of teenagers, like many other users of the app, were in search of something mysterious or interesting, never imagining that they would end up uncovering evidence of a horrific crime. What should have been a light-hearted adventure quickly turned into a nightmare that not only shook the group, but also shocked the world when the case went viral on social media. The journey started like any other. The teenagers used Randonautica to generate coordinates near Alki Beach in West Seattle and followed the directions to the location. Upon arriving, something caught their attention: a black suitcase wedged among the rocks along the shore. Initially, they thought it was just another lost item, perhaps something left behind by a high tide. But they soon realized something was off. As they approached, the strong, unmistakable stench of decay caused them to immediately step back. This unmistakable odor was the first sign that the contents of the suitcase were far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Driven by curiosity but unwilling to touch the suitcase directly, the teenagers used sticks to open it. What they found inside would change their lives forever. There was a heavy, wet black plastic bag that immediately indicated something far more tragic than they had anticipated. The tension mounted as they realized that inside the bag were human remains. Horrified and unsure of what to do, they quickly contacted the police. However, due to the delay in the police response, it took several hours for authorities to arrive. In the meantime, the tide rose and the suitcase was swept away by the water. When the police finally arrived and conducted a thorough investigation, the gravity of the situation became clear. What began as a random expedition turned into a murder investigation. The contents of the suitcase were recovered with the help of a dive team, who found not just one, but two victims inside the plastic bags. The bodies belonged to Jessica Lewis, 35, and Austin Wenner, 27, a couple who had been brutally murdered. The discovery shook the local community and gained national attention. Subsequent investigations revealed that Jessica and Austin had been killed by their landlord, Michael Dudley, over a rent dispute. Neighbors reported hearing screams on the night of the murder, with a male voice pleading to be released, followed by gunshots. The violence that occurred that night was unimaginable, and the remains of the two bodies were discarded in a cold and inhumane manner. The fact that Randonautica had led the teenagers directly to that suitcase still sends chills down the spine of many. For the teenagers, the emotional impact was devastating. The shock of finding a real crime scene, something that felt like it was straight out of a horror movie, changed their view of the world and the app forever. While many people used Randonautica lightheartedly, that specific event made others think twice before following randomly generated coordinates. The images and videos recorded by the teenagers quickly spread across social media, prompting a wave of reactions and questions about the nature of the app. The Alki Beach case served as a grim reminder that when exploring the unknown, we never truly know what we might find. Sometimes, what seems like a mere coincidence can lead us to confront the most brutal and disturbing realities of life. Jessica Lewis and Austin Wenner, whose lives were tragically and violently taken, became part of a terrifying story that continues to haunt those who remember how a group of teenagers seeking a simple adventure stumbled upon the remains of this horrific crime. Since its inception, Randonautica has sparked both fascination and fear. The app, which uses random coordinates to guide users to unusual locations, quickly became a tool for those eager to explore the unknown. However, the numerous unsettling stories and discoveries associated with the app raise a disturbing question: how safe is it to actually use Randonautica? While many have used it simply for entertainment, others have found themselves in situations that seemed straight out of horror films, or worse, real-life crime scenes. One of the app's most mysterious aspects is how the intentions set by users seem to influence the types of discoveries they make. Before starting an exploration, The app asks users to choose a purpose or feeling to guide the journey, such as adventure, curiosity, or fear. For some, the experience has been light and fun, leading them to ordinary places with no significant impact. But for others, especially those who chose darker intentions, the coordinates generated by the app appear to lead them to disturbing and dangerous places. There are numerous accounts of people encountering sinister discoveries. Many users have stumbled upon abandoned locations, occult symbols, mysteriously placed personal objects, and even signs of criminal activity. These coincidences, or what some prefer to call synchronicities, make many believe there is something deeper happening behind the app. Is Randonautica just a harmless game, or does it have the power to lead its users to places that are charged in some way, whether by negative energy or even real dangers? One of the biggest risks of using Randonautica is that it can guide users to dangerous areas without any warning or context. By following randomly generated coordinates, many people end up in unfamiliar places, which can be dangerous in itself. Remote locations, poorly lit areas, abandoned structures, or even private properties can expose explorers to risks of accidents, encounters with strangers, and, in more extreme cases, confrontations with criminals. The pursuit of mystery often leads users to ignore warning signs they might otherwise heed in a normal situation. Moreover, Randonautica has been linked to discoveries of crime scenes. The infamous Alki Beach case, where teenagers found a suitcase containing human remains, is the most extreme example. But other users have reported finding evidence of illegal activity, such as abandoned houses showing signs of violence, makeshift altars in forests, and even dead animals left in suspicious conditions. While the app itself does not intend to cause harm, the places it leads people to can often be dangerous and unpredictable. The psychological impact cannot be overlooked either. For those who come across something disturbing, the experience can leave lasting mental scars. The fear of the unknown, combined with the sensation of being watched or manipulated, can create a state of paranoia. Many users have reported having nightmares after their explorations, or even avoiding certain places or situations that previously wouldn't have bothered them. What was meant to be a simple game or adventure turns, for some, into a frightening experience that continues to haunt them. Ultimately, Randonautica reminds us of something much deeper about human nature, our attraction to the unknown, and our desire to understand what lies beyond our comprehension. However, when venturing into the unknown, it is important to remember that not everything we encounter will be pleasant or safe. The app, while fascinating, should be used with caution. The mystery it offers can be exciting, but it can also open doors to experiences many would prefer not to have lived. Whether by coincidence or something more sinister, Randonautica continues to be a tool that reveals both the secrets of the world around us and our deepest fears.